Hello, welcome to Recovery Demystified, a show where we explore our relationship to substances from a radical, non-religious, and empowering lens. Our sobriety is not a purity contract. It is an invitation to become curious about ourselves and find our own unique paths to growth and healing. If you've been questioning the role of alcohol or drugs in your life and haven't found the resources that you need, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, welcome back to Recovery Demystified. My name is Early. I'm so happy to have y'all here today. Today, we are going to dive into anxiety. Anxiety is a huge reason why a lot of us use substances. It is an extremely uncomfortable feeling that I myself personally cannot stand. But by the end of today's episode, we're going to understand the purpose of anxiety, how our substance use both helps and exacerbates anxiety, and you're going to come away with some actual real life practical tools that you can use to shred that anxiety and just get rid of that shit because it sucks. But before we get to that, I just want to say, great job surviving another week. And I know that it's a really wacky and wild world out there. So I'm just super proud of everyone for doing whatever they had to do to survive. And also, I'm super proud of you for pressing play on a recovery podcast because you could be listening to anything else right now. And the fact that you are here with me talking about anxiety and our feelings and substance use, that just tells me that you are here to care for yourself and you're walking this path and you're doing the work. So amazing fucking job. And as always, if this show helps you, I do see a lot of binge listening behavior in my statistics, which I think is really cool. It means that people are engaged in getting something out of this. So if this podcast helps you at all, in the spirit of reciprocity, it would really, really help me if you would do one of a few things, which is you can hit that subscribe button, or you can rate and review this show wherever you're listening. And also, there is a Patreon for Recovery Demystified, and I just made a free tier on there. So if you're interested in connecting with other people who are like-minded folks, then there is a little chat there on the Patreon for that. And if you're able to, there's also ways to support the show monetarily. And the lowest tier on the Patreon is just $3 a month. And it's a huge help to me when folks are able to sign up for that. And it makes this show possible for the people who can't afford to do it. So thank you to everyone who has signed up for the Patreon so far. And I look forward to connecting with y'all in that free chat. And also, I am a recovery coach, so if you're interested in working on anxiety or anything else that has to do with substance use and recovery, you can book a free 20-minute consultation with me through the link down in the show notes. And anyway, we're here today to talk about anxiety, which undoubtedly is a quite unpleasant feeling to experience. And it does lead a lot of us to use substances because we want to make it go away. And I just want to say that that makes sense. Personally, I have struggled a lot with anxiety in my life, but the thing about it is that all of our feelings and our emotions are messengers, right? And they're here to tell us that something needs to be done. So the way we get emotions is because our body, which is so intelligent, recognizes that we have a need that's not being met. And then it gives us a physical sensation, a feeling. And then our brain explains that physical sensation to us with a thought. So our feelings and our emotions come in that order. And one thing it's important to recognize is okay, the anxiety is here for a reason. What is that reason? Easier said than done because it's super uncomfortable and we just want to make it go away. The thing about anxiety while we have an addiction or while we are pretty heavy into substance use is that the way that the substances are affecting our brain and body contributes to why we are having anxiety. So specifically with alcohol, there is this neurochemical process that basically, so you drink alcohol and your brain releases a large amount of GABA, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, which basically calms you down. And your body is so intelligent and so smart that it's just always trying to achieve something called homeostasis, which is a word that means balance. So if you drink alcohol and you get this big spike of GABA, this relaxing inhibitory neurotransmitter, your body is going to say, whoa, 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 hit the brakes. There's too much of that. So it gives you a second neurochemical called glutamate, and that's an excitatory neurotransmitter. So basically, the inhibitory one comes in and brings you way down. The excitatory one comes in and brings you back up to try to have your body reach homeostasis, which is a balance. So you get a big relaxation feeling, and then you get the anxiety. And a lot of times that glutamate is still hanging around in the morning after we've drank a bunch. And that's why we get hangxiety. If you've ever heard of that, it's like the combination hangover anxiety. It's that like existential dread that just like, oh my God, what did I do? What happened? I mean, if y'all have felt hangxiety, you don't need it explained to you. Like we all know what this feels like. So that is that spike of glutamate giving us that anxiety. And then the whole thing about it is our body is so smart that as we continue to use alcohol over and over and over, our body starts to premeditate that we are going to expect to get that large GABA dump, that large relaxation neurotransmitter dump. And so to prepare for that, it gives us higher than normal levels of glutamate, which is that anxiety producing neurotransmitter. So if you drink, with any regularity, basically your body adapts to that by giving you more anxiety all the time. Just at a baseline level, you're going to have more anxiety. And the thing about it too is like it kind of sneaks up on you. Like maybe you already had a little anxiety or some social anxiety or whatever, and then you started drinking, and then all of a sudden the anxiety is climbing and climbing and climbing, and you're like, oh, well, I've always been an anxious person. I've always had anxiety, but maybe you didn't notice that it's like through the roof now. And then what happens is like, oh, we know that drinking alcohol is going to give us some relief from that anxiety because we get that GABA dump at first. So we respond to those higher than normal levels of that anxiety producing neurotransmitter by drinking to make the anxiety go away because it works. But the thing about it is then it gets worse after that. So it's this like sort of downward spiral where you kind of get caught in a loop trying to make the anxiety go away. But the thing that makes it go away is the thing that's actually causing it. And there's like a lot of other factors in play. There's like higher than normal cortisol levels during addiction, and cortisol is a stress producing hormone. And then there's like higher than normal amygdala activation, and amygdala is like our fear center in our brain. So there's like a bunch of stuff that goes into having more anxiety when you have an addiction because of the imbalance of everything that the substances produce in your body. And then also alcohol is just the one that I'm most familiar with, but there are like similar neurochemical processes that go on with a lot of other addictive substances where it's like over time, the glutamate and cortisol and everything just gets super out of balance. And then all of a sudden we are like, wow, I have like an anxiety disorder. Like what happened? Like how did it get like this? And personally, I remember a time where I was like really, really, really deep in my addiction, sort of at the tail end of it when everything was kind of falling apart really bad. And I was standing at the gas pump, just like pumping my gas, which should be a normal, boring activity that takes, 90 seconds or whatever. I just remember crawling out of my skin being like, wow, why is this taking so long? Like, why is pumping the gas taking forever? I can't stand being here. Like, just level 10 anxiety, standing there pumping gas for no reason. You know what I mean? So at that point, I was just so deep in it that my body's normal baseline level of anxiety or that glutamate, that anxiety producing neurotransmitter was just like through the roof constantly. And I mean, I'm happy to report that after being sober for, I don't know, I think it really started to change somewhere around a year. But at this point in my life, I still have, I think, a normal human amount of anxiety. Like I still experience some anxiety, but through using all of the coping skills that I'm going to explain to y'all, I feel completely at peace with the amount of anxiety that I have. And I would say it's reduced about 98%. Like I would say I have about 2% of the remaining anxiety that I used to have when I was drinking all of the time. So what did I do? What are the helpful skills that I used personally and that I've taught other people how to use to remedy anxiety, to integrate it, and to let it go? So basically, I think it's important to understand the purpose of anxiety first and foremost. Like I said earlier, every emotion, every feeling that we have, there's a reason for it. It's a signal from our body, our immensely intelligent, super strong body, that we have a need that's not being met. So the purpose of anxiety basically is to go forth with caution. Anxiety is saying potentially this could be a dangerous situation, but don't avoid the situation. Continue on, but just have caution, have some awareness. Anxiety is like, I don't know, in caveman times, it's like go forth on the hunt, but keep a look out of the corner of your eyes for predators, you know? So that's what anxiety is telling us to do. It's not saying don't go do something. It's not saying avoid something. And also, like, it's important, even though it's extremely uncomfortable, that we don't suppress it to try to make it go away. So what we can do instead, and y'all don't hate me for this, but try to practice having gratitude for experiencing the normal range of human emotions. And obviously, this is easier said than done to be like, oh, I'm grateful for my anxiety. Like, I understand that sounds like bullshit, but it was Brene Brown that said that we cannot selectively numb emotions. So as we question our relationship to substances, as we explore our sober curiosity or our sobriety or wherever we're at, can we be grateful that we're alive, that we are able to have a full range of human emotions, that we're able to have time and energy to sit and like access our thought and our perspective and just like have a moment to view our emotions. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's an amazing fucking miracle that any of us is alive and able to like experience the complexity of this human experience on Earth at all, even though parts of it suck, even though there's a lot of hard shit going on out there in the world. The chances that we're all here, the chances that you're listening to me talk, like it's so small that we're able to have this one beautiful, unique, short human experience. Like, can we take that and just extend a little bit of gratitude to ourselves for being able to experience this normal range of human emotions? And if that's not possible right now, if you're like, I just want to get rid of this anxiety, that totally makes sense. But there's an invitation there to just be grateful for our fucking existence. And then the next things that I like to do to integrate and release the anxiety is it's basically a process called RAIN, RAIN. It's an acronym. I forget exactly where I learned it from, but I did not invent this. So it's a tool that we can use with really any emotion, but I think it's especially helpful with anxiety. So RAIN stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. And so the first step is R, which is recognize. And this is when we just take a step back and say, oh, I'm feeling anxiety right now. We've recognized that an emotion exists. And I talk about this a lot with addicted voice recognition technique, which also is really tied into anxiety. But when we're talking about neuroplasticity, which is our brain's ability to grow and change and heal itself over time, a lot of the work there is in interrupting neurological feedback loops. So say in our past, the normal way we would deal with anxiety is like to have it appear and then be afraid of it, and then hate it, and then try to suppress it, and then buy into everything it says, and then get overwhelmed, and then freak out, and then self-medicate it, right? So instead of going down that neurological feedback loop, if we instead stop and just recognize, I'm having anxiety right now, that itself breaks that neurological feedback loop. And instead of getting on the hamster wheel of anxiety, we can stop and we can bring ourselves back into the perspective of the viewer, which brings us back into our prefrontal cortex, our like complex thinking. And when we're back in that part of our brain that uses complex thinking and critical thinking skills and all of our executive functioning skills, and we step back and we view that anxiety and we name it, we're removing ourselves from that neurological feedback loop and we're creating new neural pathways in that uniquely human, in that smart part of our brain. And by doing that, we are increasing our ability to exercise things like impulse control, critical thinking, and future planning and things of that nature. And we're changing our brain through neuroplasticity to heal from our addiction because it's that part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, that shrinks and gets weakened as we have an addiction. So the first thing we do is we just give it a name. We step back for a moment and say, oh, I'm experiencing anxiety. That's it. And a lot of times just doing that is going to give us a tangible amount of relief from that anxiety. It disempowers the anxiety when we don't jump on the hamster wheel with it. We give it a name, we step back, we separate ourselves from it, and we say, hey, I'm going to name this. I'm feeling anxiety. And then after we're able to name the emotion that we're feeling, we can then choose to allow it. And this might seem counterintuitive because we're like, no, I want to make the anxiety go away. But the thing about squishing down a feeling is that it doesn't make it go away. It just like pushes it into a corner, and then it's going to come back out and like sort of be like hulked up, and it's going to come back out at an inopportune time. So the way to make unpleasant emotions go away is to allow them to pass within their own time frame instead of squishing it. So we say, hello, I'm having anxiety. And then we choose to just like let it happen. And that is emotional integration, is like allowing it to take its normal course. And then the I in RAIN is investigate. So as we're like trying to allow it to happen after we've given it a name, then we can dig in a little bit because, like I said earlier, all of our emotions have a purpose. There's a reason for them. So during our investigation, we can say, okay, if the purpose of anxiety is to proceed, but with caution, why am I experiencing anxiety right now? Is it because like I'm about to go into a social setting where I would usually be drinking? Is it because I have an imbalance of neurochemicals because I've been drinking regularly for a certain amount of time or using substances regularly for a certain amount of time? Am I experiencing anxiety because I've inherited some ancestral trauma, perhaps? Am I experiencing anxiety because I didn't get enough sleep last night, or because I'm taking my dog on a walk and I see another dog across the park who's growling? Like, it could be any number of reasons, you know? So we do that investigation and we're like, what is this anxiety telling me right now? Is it because of an imbalance of my neurotransmitters because of addiction, or is it because of something that's actually going on in my physical life? And then through that investigation, if there's something that makes sense in the outside world that we can change to like honor the fact that our body is giving us this message, like if we are with our dog in the park and there's another dog growling further away, like we can turn around and walk the other direction, and maybe that would help relieve the dangerous situation. Or if we have social anxiety because we're about to go to a gathering for the first time since we quit drinking, and we've got anxiety because of that, that can be one of those where it's the message of proceed with caution. How can we equip ourselves to feel safe and nurtured and held during this social interaction without becoming overwhelmed? So the anxiety can be a warning mechanism that says, oh, we need more support in this situation before we go into it, or we need to go into it, but armor ourselves with this caution because we know we don't want to drink again at this gathering. So that's the investigation phase. And then the last one is nurture. So it's also really common for us to get upset with ourselves for having emotions like, oh, why am I angry right now? Oh, why do I have anxiety right now? That doesn't make any sense. Why am I sad over this thing I shouldn't be sad about? And the invitation here is, instead of having a secondary emotion where we're upset with ourselves for having the first emotion. Instead, can we nurture ourselves and be gentle with ourselves to be able to exercise this self-care as we allow ourselves to experience this unpleasant, difficult thing like anxiety. And then as we nurture ourselves, instead of beating ourselves up, we can relax into it. And I'm sure by the time you get to nurture in this RAIN exercise that you're probably already feeling a lot better. And honestly, like, it can be hard to nurture ourselves because we're really used to beating ourselves up because there is so much like shame involved in having an addiction that a lot of times we are buying into this idea that there's something bad or wrong or broken about us or we shouldn't feel this way. So the practice of nurturing ourselves might be really brand new and it might be awkward and it might not feel right at first. But everything that I'm talking about today is a practice, and it's something that might feel really fucking weird and out of place and like kind of wrong at first. But as we continue to try to practice these things over time, eventually it becomes second nature. And now, literally, y'all, I'm at the point where, like, if I'm experiencing anxiety, first off, it's like so minute in strength compared to how it used to be when I was drinking. And now all I have to do is get to the R. I just recognize, and I'm like, oh, I'm experiencing anxiety right now. And the vast majority of the time, after I name it, it dissipates. And I don't even have to do the other steps. I'm like, oh, I'm experiencing anxiety. And then I look it straight dead in the face and it disappears. And I just think that it's really an amazing thing to be able to do this gentleness practice with ourselves, where we're able to look inside, disrupt those neurological feedback loops, and then re-strengthen that part of our brain that contains our personality, our core self, the part of us who loves us, the part of us who doesn't want to hurt ourselves with substances anymore, and to practice nurturing that person inside. And then also, I think it's really important. I like to illustrate levels of discomfort with a bullseye. And I talk about this all the time. And if you've heard me say it before, like, I also invite you to not be upset at repetition, but understand that repetition is where we learn best. So the discomfort bullseye, imagine a 3-tiered bullseye, and at the center is our comfort zone or our safe zone, and that's where our addiction lives. Then we get a little bit outside of our comfort zone, and then that is the growth zone. And if we're able to tolerate our emotions and use things like the RAIN technique while we're in that growth zone, that's when we can experience healing and change. But if we get too far outside of that growth zone, outside of the comfort zone, past the growth zone, then we get into the panic zone. And the panic zone is when our nervous system, our fight or flight, is activated. And that is when things like the RAIN technique might help. But honestly, that's when physical grounding techniques are going to be more appropriate. That's when emotional tolerance is going to be damn near impossible. So we need to bring ourselves back down, deactivate, and get back down into that growth zone for things like this to work. So if we're panicking, the physical relief that we can get is going to be from grounding techniques, and they're things that we need to understand and practice before we're in a panic, because it's basically impossible to learn how to do new grounding techniques, new skills at all when we're in a panic. So I like to learn different like yoga breathing techniques, like meditative breathing techniques. There's several different ways to downregulate our nervous system through vagal nerve activation. So something that I've heard of a bunch of times is putting like an ice pack on the back of our neck or doing a cold plunge that can instantly bring a person out of nervous system activation. And yeah, there's just like a huge variety of things that you can try. And I go much more deeply into all of this in the episode that came out on March 31st, which is called The Number One Skill You Need to Be Bulletproof in Recovery, How to Be Comfortable in Any Situation. But yeah, basically we need physical grounding techniques to remove us from that fight or flight nervous system activation. And that can come through any different number of ways. A lot of times, like when I'm with a therapist, they'll bring me back to safety by helping me reorient with my surroundings. So they'll, bring me to pet the dog or like ask me about the painting on the wall or something of that nature. And yeah, there's kind of like a zillion different ways to recalibrate and get out of that fight or flight zone. And those are things that we need to learn before we're in that panic. But I just wanted to touch on the fact that there's like different tiers of anxiety, right? And what I'm talking about today with the RAIN technique and the emotional integration is the level of anxiety that sucks but is tolerable, not the anxiety when we get outside of our window of tolerance. That's something we can go back to that March 31st episode and learn more about. And also, I love this analogy that I learned when I went to see a Buddhist monk give a talk one time several years ago. And I think that this really relates to emotional tolerance and emotional integration and preparing ourselves with the skills that we need to deal with things like anxiety out in the world. And basically he said, if you imagine the whole world is covered in thorns and you leave your house and you're like, ow, my feet, like you're barefoot and you're like, ow, these thorns are like stabbing my feet. What do I need to do to get out here in the world and explore the world and make it safe for me? He said the unskillful thing to do would be to go get a million yoga mats and try to put yoga mats over all the thorns to try to change the whole world to be comfortable for you. Instead, the more skillful thing to do would be to go back in your house and put on a pair of boots. And that way, it doesn't matter where you walk, the thorns are not going to stab you because you have your boots on. And that is an analogy for learning how to prepare ourselves to interact with the world instead of trying to change the rest of the world to be acceptable for us. And I think that learning emotional tolerance, emotional integration, practicing that RAIN technique, that is our boots, that is us putting on our emotional boots so we can get out there and experience the world and be able to tolerate it because we've prepared ourselves by learning how to tolerate difficult things, including anxiety, which, man, if I could press a button and make one thing go away, it would be anxiety because holy shit, it's fucking uncomfortable. And if you have anxiety right now, if you have chronic anxiety, if you have anxiety that's due to substance use, like I feel you so hard. And I just want to let you know that there is a way out of it. And it's through emotional regulation. And also, I guess just going back to how our body gets imbalanced over time with the GABA and glutamate and the homeostasis that I was talking about earlier. As we quit using substances, that homeostasis in our body returns back to normal. So that elevated level of anxiety that we get from drinking or using substances regularly, as we stop doing that anxiety just goes back to a normal baseline level and your body will heal itself over time. And yeah, I guess I'm just like living proof of that because I used to have intolerable, overwhelming, fucked up anxiety. And I drank so much because of it. And now I'm just chilling, y'all. I'm just chilling. Yeah, and one other thing I want to tie into it is I talk all the time about addicted voice recognition technique, which is learning how to recognize what thoughts are our addiction and what thoughts are us. And if you want to learn more about addicted voice recognition technique, you can listen to the episode that came out on April 28th, Stop Fighting with Yourself, Train Your Brain to Stop Cravings. But anxiety, as we're learning more about addicted voice, the addicted voice in our minds, anxiety is hugely tied into that. If we're experiencing the feeling of anxiety, that is something our addicted voice is going to latch onto so hard because the addicted voice is a wormy little shit and it knows how much anxiety sucks and how much you want to make it go away. So if you're starting the practice of addicted voice recognition technique and you're working on that, I would definitely invite you to try to explore how the addicted voice is relating to your experiences of anxiety and how it latches onto that emotion and offers its own solutions to try to make it go away. And as we do that, as we recognize that pattern, that's going to be another thing that's breaking that neurological feedback loop using neuroplasticity and regrowing that smart part of our brain to make our addiction go away. So there is hope. if you've had anxiety forever, even if it was since you were a kid like me, there are ways to learn how to use healthy emotional integration skills and heal your body and heal your mind to get to a point where anxiety no longer bothers you. And I'm living proof of that. And if you want help learning these skills and personalizing them in your own life, I would be so excited to do recovery coaching work with you. And I honestly, I absolutely love doing this recovery coaching work. Everyone that I've spoken to so far has been so interesting and engaging, and I just love every conversation that I've had. So if you're on the fence, go ahead and schedule one of those free 20-minute consultations, because what's the worst that could happen? It's free. And I really look forward to meeting you. I don't think anyone should have to suffer alone. And I am doing this work because this is what I needed when I was suffering alone. So I want to be able to provide this for people so they don't feel as alone, so they can learn these skills, and so you don't have to be stuck in your addiction forever. And yeah, if you're suffering today, I'm fucking sorry, and I see you, and I know what it's like. And if you're listening all the way through to the end of an addiction recovery podcast, I think that shows that you're doing the work. You're on the right path, and I'm super proud of you. And if I can recover, anyone can. And I guess that's about it, y'all. Super proud of you. I look forward to talking to you next week. I love you. May you be happy and free. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Recovery Demystified. If you like what you heard, share it with a friend or rate and review us so we can reach a larger audience. Recovery Demystified is produced and edited by me, Early Brunner. Stevie Pettit made our logo. Our beautiful theme music is by Logan Bragg, and our social media manager is Kaylee Bausch. We are entirely supported by your generous donations as a 501c3 nonprofit. You can find a link to donate in the description. May you be happy and free, dear listener.